All right. Well, welcome everybody to our Friday training session for Joyful Times Today. I want to welcome everybody here. So this is scheduled to be our training webinar for social influencers and sourcing. So I am going to get started here in just a minute, but I first want to unmute Becky and Lisa, and just want to make sure that you can both hear me currently.
Yep, you're loud and clear.
All right, Becky, you with us? Okay, so Becky has a question, and she says she's here. Okay, great. Well, there we go. Okay, so I am going to proceed, and again, welcome everybody to the webinar training for social influencers and sourcing. So we have a lot of information to cover here today, and I'm going to jump right in. And first, let me kind of refresh and let you know that the three people that will be co-hosting this webinar today is, of course, our founder, Becky Capps, Lisa Jander, and myself. So I'm going to be doing the training today, and we'll be opening it up for questions and input from both Lisa and Becky as we go along here. Now, we have previously in other training sessions have gone over, for example, our WordPress training. We have talked about identifying your audience. Today, we're going to be talking about really the details of content research and writing when it comes to identifying social influencers and sourcing them. And this is going to be a lot of information. So I'm going to go through it here, but please remember, we're going to send out follow-up information so that you'll have detailed documentation that you can read at your own leisure. We're also recording this webinar, so you will be able to review it again and again. And please remember, don't get frustrated because this is new information and this will take time for you to get comfortable with it. These are probably completely new concepts, probably completely new approaches to researching and writing, and probably completely new tools that you've never used before. So just like with WordPress, when we went through the training there, you need to understand that there will be some new experiences where it will take time for you to get comfortable with the process. So again, you'll have this available for repeat training and so forth. But just recognizing that it's going to be a lot of information. We don't expect you to learn it all or grasp it all today. We're going to give you the information, and then we'll talk about follow-up and doing further training. So for today, when we talk about social influencers and sourcing, there's really three main components that we want to talk about. One is finding the conversation, participating in the conversation, contributing to the conversation, and really understanding where these conversations are being held. That's the first piece. And then the second piece is what we call content curation. Where do we get content? Why do we get content? How do we get content? We'll talk about that in some detail. And then we're going to talk about community building. What is community building? Why is it important? And how does that relate to content research and writing? Okay, so those are the main topics. Now, when we talk about this, these are really the 3 C's of social media. So this again is conversation, content curation, and community building. Now I want to talk about why this is really important. So when we talk about properly executing these social media tactics that we're going to be talking about, it will, number one, build brand awareness. So we are building a brand around Joyful Times Today, and we're going to continue to increase that brand. We're going to increase our traffic so that everything that we're talking about is about adding more and more visitors, unique visitors, and building our audience, and then increasing conversions, which is about increasing, when we talk about conversion, it means having more people who are more interested in looking at our advertising and will click on that advertising and generate revenue. And that's obviously how each of you will participate. in additional revenue beyond what we're paying you per article, you will also participate in a percentage of the revenue. So it's important that you understand conversions because it directly will impact your bottom line and how much you generate per article. And we want to expose and understand audience issues, right? What's timely, what's trending, what's most interesting, where are we getting the most traction? So all of that is part of the reasons why. But another very important reason to use social media is that we really want to build a strong community of influencers within your particular, subject matter. Whether it's a category, or whether it's a topic, or whether it's a particular line of writing that you're doing, we want to build a very strong community of influencers, and we'll talk about who influencers are and how do you identify them. But with that strong, targeted, and active community, that gives us the ability to promote our content in new ways and see increased engagement. The more engagement we have, the higher the traffic is going to build, the farther the reach we're going to get, and the more engagement we're going to benefit from. So as a foundation, we first need to answer a few questions that are going to guide our efforts. So those questions are, how are we going to reach people? How are we going to get people to either like us or follow us or plus us on Google+? And then what are we going to do when they do start following us? So the answers to these questions really become the basis for your individual social media strategy, and that's what we're going to be sharing with you in this training today. Now let me pause for just a second, and I'm going to unmute Becky and Lisa, and just make sure that you're still with us. And any questions so far? Lisa?
Not on this end.
Okay, great. All right, well, I'm going to keep you unmuted so you can interrupt me at any point in time here. Okay, now let's dig into the answers to question number one. Obviously, we'll begin with our commitment to getting into conversations that are currently happening. So being engaged and understanding where our influencers are currently having conversations and being able to find those conversations is obviously the first step. We have a number of tools that are going to help you find your issues, subjects, or topics and who's talking about them. So let's talk about some of these tools. In order for you to look at who is sharing your type of content right now, we need to identify the readers and or writers that are sharing this type of content by using the following tools. So we've listed 3 tools here. You will be able to Google these and find the actual links for these. If you go into your Twitter account, you can search for it, or you can Google it and you'll find these tools. We will follow up with the documentation that will give you the exact URL. But this is a high-level introduction to what these tools are. So the first one is Tweet Reach. And again, this is just a simple tool that can show you how far your tweets are going, who is sharing them, and who they've touched. There is another tool called Refollow, which allows you to check in on your Twitter followers. You can identify the influencers and promoters, and you can learn how to engage them to keep them around. So that's a really interesting tool. Then there's Twitter Search. You can also use this tool to search your domain name or your topic or your Twitter handle and see what results come up. That's a great way to get information or ideas about trends and hashtags and a variety of other information. The history on this is not very deep, so you'd have to stay on top of this on almost a daily basis, but it does give you, a source for ideas, for getting others who are on related topics or in your particular topic area, so it's a great tool from that standpoint. Now, in terms of finding influencers, let me talk for just a minute about what is an influencer. An influencer is an author, a writer, an expert, a professor, a teacher, a pastor, It is any person who has a social footprint who is attempting to reach audience through the same tools that we're using, which is through their own website, their own blog, their own social media accounts. We want to find people who are subject matter experts in the topics that you're writing on, who have large Facebook fan followers, large Twitter follower numbers, big Pinterest followers, a large number of LinkedIn connections. So we want to find the social influencers who have gravitas in the space. So if you think about your particular topic, you want to find the celebrities or the iconic individuals who are most likely to have a large following and be the influencer in that area. Now, there are a couple of tools here. Follower Wonk is one of those tools that can help you find influencers based on your keyword focus or your subject matter focus or your article titles or the type of subjects that you're going after. And you can log in, create a free account. You can go into this and you can search Twitter bios, which is a feature of this tool. And then you can sort by social authority. So it's a really powerful way to use an automated tool to find influencers in your particular area. And another really good web-based tool that you can search by keywords is BuzzSumo. So if you go to buzzsumo.com, it'll allow you to create a free account. There's training right there on the system. And again, we're going to go through detailed training later on each of these individual tools. So for today, this is just a high-level introduction to the overall process and the overall set of tools. We're not going to go into details of exactly how to use Follower Wonk or BuzzSumo today. It would just be too detailed for that. But as with WordPress training, there's a lot of videos on YouTube. There's a lot of tutorials and help right in the areas where you sign up for these accounts. So don't be afraid to jump right in and set up a free account and go through their tutorials and learn how to use these different tools, because they're very helpful in terms of finding your influencers. Whoops. Okay. Another great way to find conversations. Now, if you're not a tool person and if you don't feel really comfortable about learning new tools, there are other ways besides software tools to do this. So if you're a little more old school and want to do a little more manual process, another great way to find these conversations is to look at where are competing authors, where are other organizations that would compete with us for good positive content, or trade associations for positive women's groups or positive think seminars. Where are those people spending time? Where are they writing? Where are they socializing? What groups are they a part of? What Facebook pages are they fans of? What hashtags are they using? All of that can be information that can be gathered manually. So if you go to their social media profiles and see who they're following and what groups they're in, it can help you really ascertain, number one, if they're the right social influencer, and if they are, who are the people in their related network that would fit with our audience. And maybe there's additional social influencers who might not be the top tier level 1 celebrity profile, but maybe they're a tier 2 really strong follower who's an emerging blogger that you can definitely get a relationship with. So you can look at Google Plus communities. You can go into LinkedIn and you can go to either groups or pages. Those are really excellent sources for finding influencers. You can go into niche specific forums. I mean, there are forums and blogs specifically for supporting other authors where you can get ideas, you can figure out how to get over writer's block, you can get suggestions for topics. So there's all kinds of niche specific forums specifically for writers. You can go into Twitter lists and find good influencers. So if you click on lists when you're viewing their profile, you can actually subscribe to follow their list. which is kind of an interesting tool that not a lot of people know about in Twitter, that it allows you to follow their list without following an individual user in that list. Because there's certain dynamics to how many people you follow, and if you follow, one list, it doesn't look like you're following 50,000 people. So that's a good tool to know about when you're trying to figure out, who's doing what there. And then obviously looking on Facebook pages, looking at who are the followers, how many followers. Obviously, somebody who's got 10,000 versus 100,000 versus a million Facebook fans on their page, that's going to help you determine relatively where they stand in terms of looking at all the other social influencers that you're talking about. Now, in terms of the conversation, we want to encourage you to engage. So as part of this conversation, it's not only finding the social influencers and finding where they are in conversation, but it's also having you engage in building relationship, which means that you can comment on posts, which is, we really want you to genuinely show interest in the points made by those authors. We want to encourage you to comment as early as possible on a post. And we want to encourage you to provide some kind of insight or offer maybe a different angle that somebody might not have thought about. So it's really about being involved in this conversation. Another way is to pose questions where you can, find specific problems, tasks, or goals associated with the audience that's, reading that particular article, and then pose questions on the influencer's post or blog to, again, encourage and engage and promote questions and really help them engage, because the more you help them increase engagement, the more likely they're going to want to be engaged in a virtual relationship with you, because you're helping them accomplish their goals as well. Then after you've done that, then you can share your content. So after you've had a consistent time where you're commenting on posts, you're posing questions, you're interacting, then you have the opportunity to share your content. Now, you want to be very careful with this. You don't want to do this right off the bat, because it'll come across as spammy or marketing. But in time, you can, within a comment or in a response to a Google Plus post, you can offer a link to your content that answers somebody else's concern. So it doesn't necessarily have to be directly about the article. You can provide a link to your article that might provide a different perspective, answering the question or addressing the issue that might come up in that thread of conversation. So you want to definitely respond to existing conversations. You can obviously jump into a comment thread, reply to a Twitter conversation. It's okay to just like or one plus some good sentiments, but you definitely want to do more than just that. So it includes actually commenting, posing questions, sharing it, and doing a little bit more to demonstrate that you're actually part of that conversation. Now, before I jump into content curation, Lisa or Becky, do either of you have any questions? Anybody, everybody good so far?
Yeah, I'm good. I think that one of the things about what you had just gone over with the conversation that I'd like to share is that it's important not to get too overwhelmed by spreading yourself thin and having too many people that you are trying to get the attention of as an influencer, and just kind of reiterate what you were saying about a second tier, because first tiers are really overwhelmed with people trying to use them as an influencer. So finding the people that are just one step below them that still have lots and lots of followers but are not inundated by people wanting to be have them as their influencers.
That's a great point, Lisa. And to elaborate on that, let me just do the simple math. So ultimately, what Lisa's referring to is you may limit your number of social influencers once you actually find and build relationships with solid social influencers. You may only have 4, 5, or 6 of them. And if you have, let's say you find 6 of them that over the course of several months you build relationship, you become recognized, they follow you, you follow them, you're sharing comments, you've built this engagement. Let's just assume that each one of these 6 social influencers have, let's just say, 20,000 followers on their Twitter account. That now means you have an additional reach of 120,000 people in just those 6 social influencers who they will retweet your information to once you've built that credibility with them and you're part of their conversation. So that's what Lisa's talking about, is it doesn't take, hundreds of social influencers. You really want to find a key stable of social influencers. You may have to go through 12 or 15 or 20 of them to really find 4, 5, or 6 that are your really key social influencers. But that's a good point, Lisa. I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, any other questions?
Can you hear me yet?
Yes, Becky, go ahead.
Oh, finally. I've had trouble with the microphone. One of the things that has thrilled my heart when I finally had social influencers contact me is it just prompted me to use them more. One of them is Ben Pearshale, who I've used all of his videos on our page, and he knows who I am and he reaches out to me by name now. And Michael Card, who's a singer, and Danny Goki. So all 3 of them are used to me now, and it really makes the job more fun when you know that you can get their attention.
Absolutely, and Becky, that's a great example of exactly how we want to encourage everybody in this training to really focus on thinking about them as building a new set of friends, right? If you think about the number of close friends that you trust and would really, want to spend time with and engage with, it's not thousands of people. So it's not like Facebook where, I may have 2,000 friends in my network of Facebook friends, but those aren't really my actual friends. And the same thing is going to apply here. The social influencers are ones that you're going to be that you admire, that you respect, that you value their opinion. They have like-minded values, principles, and beliefs. They have excellent, encouragement and recommendation. They fit with our joyful attitude. And they're ones that you really want to build a relationship with. And that if you think about how you want to establish that relationship, and you think about the reward of, like Becky just said, that now all of a sudden they will consider you a peer and use you as a social influencer as well. So those are very encouraging thoughts. So thank you, Becky.
Sure.
All right. Anything else from anybody? Okay, so I don't see any questions. If you do have any questions, you can, in your GoToWebinar control panel, you can click on the section that says questions. Feel free to type those in. We'll check on that periodically. Or just raise your hand and we'll be happy to pause and answer any questions. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, so in terms of, now that you've established the conversation, now you know who your social influencers are, you know who you want to be in your network, you've got the conversations identified. Now what do? Let's talk about content curation. Content curation is where we are going to be encouraging you in a specific way to really find, read, and research authority websites, high-value blogs, any industry publications that are similar to or related to the subjects that we're writing about, and looking at associations for high-quality content. Once you get that, you also want to see who's posting on Facebook, who's tweeting on Twitter with a point related to that content. So there's a way to look at this to possibly use a question to create engagement, which can be looking at their partner content, the influencer content, the industry associations, and you can also research think tanks. So all of these are resources of where you can find content that you're going to curate into your article. And what we're talking about in terms of content creation is not necessarily pulling specific information, but it's more identifying a supporting thought, a quote that you can use from that social influencer, and incorporate it to support the position or the point that you're making in your article. Now, you want to be able to reference this, and the importance of that is that you're going to share this content across proper networks based on topic and target audience. So we want to almost think about, changing the message from kind of their marketing copy to revise it and adjust it so that it fits and connects with our audience or your particular audience for the subject that you're writing about. Now we want to, as we've alluded to earlier, we want to curate from past contributors so that they, again, build relationship. This is about, repeatable, scalable relationships. And you want to be able to create notifications to current followers that's going to be leveraged and really get that viral response. Like I was talking about in the math, when you have 6 social influencers with 20,000 followers on their Twitter account, you now all of a sudden have 120,000 people that's going to get notifications when that person retweets your information. And this is really about keeping activity going. Now, the objective here is the reason that you've identified social influencers is that you're going to find content that they've published that you can pull excerpts from, you can make quotes from, or you can use a paragraph from their content to help support or define or explain something in the article that you're writing. So that is the point of, let me back up here, content curation. Now, when we talk about that content curation, there is a specific sourcing way that we want you to be able to reference that. Now, both Becky and Lisa have talked about this previously, and I believe Lisa has just today emailed out a document with specific pictures that talk about how to create a source for your social influencer when you do use them. Lisa, do you want to confirm that that's gone out?
Yes, it did. It was actually an image that Becky actually put together. It's great. It's a really great guide for knowing you have all the right pieces when you're referencing or sourcing a book or an online source. So it's a really great visual to see exactly how it should be written out. So Becky provided that to me, and I sent it out earlier today.
Okay. And so there is an example there that shows once you find your social influencer, once you have their content that you're going to pull a quote, a line of content, a paragraph, or a concept, and you want to source them, that gives you the detailed information about how to source it in a particular article in that format. Now, I'll go live here and we'll talk about this briefly, so we give you a couple examples of what this looks like on the website. But let me pause here for just a second and see if there's any questions on content curation or sourcing. Okay. All right, so I will move on here to community building. Now, you've identified the conversations, you've found your social influencers, you've curated your content. Now what do you do with it? Well, the whole point here of what we're doing is we're building a community. There is a concept called tribal association where everybody wants to feel a part of a community, right? We were designed and created to be part of a family. We were designed and created to be part of a community. We were designed and created to be part of the church body. So everybody has this DNA desire to be part of community. So how do we use the conversations that we've identified, the content that we've written, the sourcing that we've identified from the social influencers, how do we leverage all that into building community? And that's really what we're talking about here, is how do we build all of that into leveraging our influencers, and being able to do that is by creating events, doing tweet chats, doing Google Hangouts, and there's a number of suggested ideas here where you can actually coordinate with in-house experts, for example, at a seminar company, right? Or an organization that's holding a special retreat, or your church that's doing a weekend seminar. You can coordinate with those in-house experts and your selected influencers to make sure that you're involved in the conversation with them. Now, the whole point of finding these social influencers is you want to leverage those influencers with a greater footprint than your own to be able to get that viral reach. So if you can find, you may have 1,000 followers on your Twitter account. If you can, as a first step, find Twitter accounts or social influencers with a Twitter account that have maybe 5,000 or 10,000 followers, that's a good step because they have larger reach than you do, and that's part of gaining credibility. And eventually that can lead into finding somebody with 50,000 followers or 100,000 or 1 million, right? That's the objective, is you want to leverage influencers and find influencers with a greater footprint than you do. Then you also want to format your stuff with specific questions that can be used in articles or videos after you've developed these relationships. So when you're involved in creating these events, you can record them so that you can, just like today, we're recording this webinar. This will be available for later. But if you're doing, a hangout with your target audience for a specific subject matter, they've talked about doing local get-togethers just for, hangouts. So there's a number of different ways to create these events to get with local community members. And again, you just want to leverage them to figure out, the best way to record them, the best way to use them, and the best way to promote them to your social influencers. Now, the email newsletter is another way that we're continuing to build community. Now, we have a subscription button on the website for everybody to sign up for the newsletter. And we have just started doing a weekly distribution of that newsletter. We would ultimately, as we continue to grow, we think there will be enough content and enough interest to be able to move that to a daily newsletter. But for now, it's being sent out once a week. We hope that each of you have been receiving that. If you haven't, please definitely go ahead and sign up, because we don't manually put anybody on there. So if you're not getting it, it means you haven't subscribed. So if you want to see what we're publishing and how it's going out and how it's formatted, definitely make sure you're subscribed to that. But it's basically a distribution method for us to build our internal contacts and our network. So it's another channel where we can, send out information and drive and motivate people to come to the website. So as you build your relationships, you can get to a point where you can consider inviting your contacts to subscribe to the newsletter. When you're comfortable that you've got good relationships and that there's value here for the relationships and the social influencers that you've built or the followers that you've built, you definitely can create a reason to give them this information, and you really want to focus on it providing value. That's a huge part of this email newsletter, is it gives them faster, easy access to the articles that are of most interest to them, because we'll give them 5 or 6 of the top articles of the week. Give them immediate access to the verse of the day, or the evening prayer. So it's just a really good way to connect. If there's an opportunity, again, this is part of the incentive for our writers, that if your article is selected as a featured article, you obviously get a bump in terms of that exposure on Facebook. Equally the same with email distribution. If your article is selected to be promoted in the email, that will also increase your readership and bump the traffic to your particular article. Now, the last thing is I want to really encourage that you want to become involved in your local community. So as much as this is a viral effort, there is a human component to it, and there is nothing like getting face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball. So that means, finding out what's going on in your local community, attending events, participating in conferences, looking at where your social influencers are giving presentations or doing, book readings, or participating in, library openings, any event where you can reinforce these relationships, and that means shaking hands, pressing the flesh, having coffee, interacting, and really letting them know that you're a part of the community. Okay, so this is all part of that tribal community building encouragement. Now let's talk about finding influencers in your niche. Really, the best content promotion efforts are going to start by finding the influencers in your niche, which we've talked about earlier. And it's absolutely critical to this strategy that we have to get your content and our collective content in front of these social influencers. That means that we have the opportunity to get your content organically picked up by these influential bloggers or by organizations or news entities without really doing self-promotion. And that is a huge part of the organic growth, but also taking the viral growth like we talked about. If you have 6 social influencers who have 20,000 followers each, all of a sudden you have an organic distribution now because these influential bloggers have picked up your content and they've retweeted it or sent it out to their followers. That's a huge part of this. That is the impact to why you want to adopt this strategy. Now, there are some free tools and analysis that we'll talk about, a couple of them that we've shared already. But the process we're describing in this training is really a methodical way to identify exactly where we need to expose our content, right? Who are the social influencers? Where are those conversations happening? And who we want to consume it. What's the list of followers that they have in their network? And that process is going to help us really get a deeper understanding of those influencers in our particular niche and to build relationships with them. So we need to find where these influencers regularly read, right? And that we can do by extracting the URLs from their tweets. So you can learn a lot about your social influencers by reading their thread of conversations, looking at their tweets, finding the URLs that are embedded in their tweets, going and looking at that and really understanding, what are they regularly reading? What are they interested in? What are the things either in your existing inventory of content or in content that you want to write that can be geared to help you build that relationship with that social influencer? Now, I've talked about this before, but BuzzStream and BuzzSumo, they kind of are sister technologies. BuzzStream can help you keep track of new contents and targets that have come out of the research that you did in BuzzSumo. So BuzzSumo is a way to identify it, and BuzzStream is a way to organize it and manage it. So those are just 2 tools that can help you both identify and track new contacts. Now, when we talk about identifying them, here's some other tools. So we want to be able to create a profile around these social influencers. You want to be able to understand what content these social influencers like, which websites they're visiting, what articles they're reading, what they're sharing, and who they are most influenced by when they're posting or retweeting or commenting on content out there. So we have to determine, like we've talked about before, who the influencers are. So there are lots and lots of influencers out there. Believe me, there is no shortage of social influencers. The objective here is to get very specific and find the strongest influencers that's in our vertical or is in our particular topic, subject matter area, or is expert in the particular subjects that you're writing about. So there's several tools that we use to find these social influencers, whether it's a person or organizations. And I've listed them here. Follower Wonk. Again, we're not going to go into the details of this today, but it's a specific tool that you can Google and learn how to use the search Twitter bios feature to understand who these social influencers are. It's a fast way to sort these social influencers by social authority. So it's an excellent tool to use. And then the same thing with BuzzSumo. So BuzzSumo has a feature called the Influencer Search tab. You can find influencers there, and you can sort by reply ratio. And then you can separately sort by retweet ratio. So those are indicators that help you understand the actual social footprint that these influencers have. So the higher reply ratio and the higher retweet ratio they have, the more engaged that social influencer is. So somebody with 20,000 Twitter followers, there may be 6 of your social influencers who all have the same number of followers, but the difference in their reply ratios and retweet ratios is going to determine that some of them may have higher value than others because they're more engaged, even though they have exactly the same number of physical contacts. All right. So once you've found them, then you want to find the content that they like. So how do you find content that they like? We're going to find out what websites and content these social influencers read. So there's a great tool called All My Tweets. So you can create and sign in with your Twitter account, and you can place the target Twitter account of your social influencer in this field in the All My Tweets, and this tool will go out and analyze it. So it will come back, and once it's finished giving all the tweets from a designated time period, it'll extract them. So you can use either an add-on to Firefox or the native application, and it depends on what browser you use, but it's a really powerful tool to help you gather, analyze, and identify, what are the websites that they're visiting, what's the content that influences your social influencers. There's another tool called Link Gopher. This is a Firefox add-on. So if you're using Firefox as a browser, you can go to add-ons or search for Link Gopher Firefox add-on. You can install that, and after it's there, you're going to notice a small link in the bottom right of the browser called Link. And if you right-click on that and select Extract All Links, you're going to see the results with all the links listed. So you can then copy and paste that into an Excel spreadsheet, and you can start to build the websites and the content that these influencers are reading. So that's another tool that will help you, find out what websites are they going to, what content influences them, and this is about learning more about the content that your social influencers like. Now, another part of the strategy is to identify common followers. So now that you've gone through the conversation identification, you've done the content curation, you've written your articles, you've quoted your social influencers, you've figured out where the social influencers are reading and what websites they're going to, now it's time to find all the common followers that they have as part of their network. So we'll go back to FollowerWonk to get this information. So when you go into FollowerWonk, there is a tab called Compare Users. You can input 3 of your targets or 3 of your social influencers, and the tool will allow you to find the common followers. So that's a really powerful feature that finds common followers among your 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 social influencers. And it's a great source for finding new social influencers that 2 or 3 of your high target social influencers actually follow. So it's another way to expand your follower network and to evaluate if there's other social influencers that you want to add to the list. So it's really just identifying these potential social influencers from the followers that all of the primary social influencers follow together. Okay. Now, in terms of gathering the contact information on all these people. So once you upload the FollowerWonk information and the sets of information that you found in BuzzStream through BuzzSumo, you want to make sure that you use proper tagging on these and keep track of the source. Okay, so this will help manage and organize your information. So you're going to want to understand and track your top domains tweeted by each influencer. You're going to understand the contributor websites that they reference. You're going to want to keep track of their favorite websites, and you're going to want to find and keep track of the common follower websites. So these are all pieces of information that start to build the overall understanding that you have about your social influencers. And again, this is a lot of information, so there's a lot of detail here that, as you become fully mature in understanding, the importance of how this impacts, your overall reach, it will become clearer over time as to why these things are important. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and ask for any questions. And again, just while we're opening this up for questions, I'm also going to jump out to Joyful Times and show an example of doing the sourcing, and then let you know also that we'll follow up this webinar with detailed documentations. So you'll have a link to the replay of this webinar. You'll have the detailed documents providing more training that you can go through yourself. And at this point, Lisa or Becky, do you have any questions?
I have not even an observation, just a hint. I have an index card for the influencers that I use, and I have 7 that are primary, not counting all the music ones that I post a lot of. But for example, with Danny Goki, I took the article that I wrote about him featuring his music, When I Rise, Give Me, I can't even think of it right now, In the Morning When I Rise, Give Me Jesus, and I actually took the link and put it on his Facebook page. And I'm very comfortable and very familiar with Facebook, so I do tend to use it the most. But several of his followers on Facebook then clicked like and made comments. So that's another way to gather even new people that will come over to our .com site.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent, Becky. Thank you. And we can talk about going to that specific article as an example of that, but I've pulled up an article here called The World's Greatest Ambassador of Joy. And this was an article that was written about the late Meadowlark Lemon. And so, again, it doesn't matter the topic, it doesn't matter the subject matter, but we want to talk about some principles here. So you can see, that we've constructed the article with the title and with images and different images that include the keyword for the article. And as we get down here, you'll see in this particular paragraph, there is a reference here. Now, we're working on the technical tools to be able to make this look better than this looks right here. So we want to go away from the parentheses and so forth with just the number in a superscript. So that's a technical issue, but what we're really pointing out here is that this just denotes that this information above is referenced and sourced to the bottom of the article. So if you go down to the bottom of the article, now you can see all the sources that are in this article. And so item number 1 is sourced from the official website biography. Item number 2 gives other information, which actually has a live link out to the same information. It also gives you a link to his Twitter account. It also gives information on another quote here down in the article. So this is an example of the type of sourcing of the social influencers that you want to be able to do in your articles. Now, Becky, again, Lisa has sent out a graphic that Becky has created. Lisa, do you want me to share the screen here with you? Do you have that up? Do you want to pull that picture up and talk about that for just a minute?
No, I don't. Well, I don't know that are you talking about the actual image that I sent out today?
Yeah.
It might be easier for Becky to do it, but I can see if I can find it real quick.
Okay. While Lisa's looking for that, Becky, do you want to tell me the article that you were referencing, and we'll go take a look at that?
Yeah, look under inspiration and then music. Or maybe it'd be easier just to do a search for it. Put Danny Goki's name in.
And there we go.
There it is, right there, the first one. Give Me Jesus.
Okay.
Okay, and so what I did is I actually copied and pasted this and put it on his Facebook page, just like that. Now we don't allow that on our Facebook pages, but a lot of the other people do. And this was before I was doing the sourcing correctly. I mean, I sourced the video,
Yep.
the way we do it with video links. So there wasn't really anything major, but Danny liked it, and it made him happy. So that's what it's all about.
Yep. That's great. All right.
Okay, I have the image up if you want to share screen.
Yep.
And then Becky.
Whoops.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so what we're doing is, this is the basic APA reference style. There's lots of different reference styles around the world. And just to make it easy, we're going to be using this one. You don't need to know a single thing about it because I've laid it out for you, and it's so easy. And in a book, you would put the author's last name, which was in this case Swindoll, and then you put just his initial, and you put a period. You're going to be putting a period after every single section. Then next you put the date in parentheses, and you don't need, in a book, you don't need to put anything other than the year. The next would be the title of the book, which is Bedside Blessings, and it's always italicized. The next is where the book is published, which in this case is Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then the last, it's Thomas Nelson Publishers. So, I mean, it is super, super easy. All of this can be found on the inside of your book jacket that you might be sourcing. And I have seriously got probably 2,000 or 3,000 books, and so I'm a mini library, and I pick up the books and use those to source quite often. You can also source through Amazon or something like that, but that's a different way that we would do it, which is down below in the online source.
Excellent.
So the online sourcing is you do it similar. In this case it was Piper John, and again it's the same way, his last name and his initial with a period. Here we're going to put for the date a little more information. And the reason for that is that online sources have tons and tons, just like we do, of materials. So if somebody wanted to go to Joyful Times Today and quote us, the person that would end up at our link wouldn't know how to even find it. This way they're going to have a date. Then the title is not italicized. This case was is Oprah right on Psalm 37:4 was the titles of his article, and then you put retrieved from, and you're going to always do that. It's really important that our audience knows, and we're doing it correctly. And so eventually Google will realize that we are one of the few websites that actually references the way it should be done, and so these are kudos from Google to us. So you would put retrieved from Desiring God website, and then you've got the colon, and then you put in your copy and paste HTTP link that you've gathered from your website. So this is so easy. If there's ever something that you don't know how to do, I have got this $75 book that is ridiculous if you saw the size of it, but I can do any of those for you if it's just like an odd type. There's also a free sourcing website called Citation Machine, and they will let you do a certain amount free, but it might confuse you more than help you. And so if you put into your draft all the information, if it's something that you're not comfortable with, then Lisa or I can take care of that for you. Actually, Lisa can take care of you. I'm trying to step away from this.
Excellent. Well, that's great, Becky. So thank you for sharing that. Now, let me just kind of close us up today with the reason.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Can I jump in with one question?
Sure.
Yeah, one thing I want to talk about. Are you still looking at my screen right here when you have the link? It's important to know, and it doesn't show it on this image. Is the link supposed to be live or not?
Yes, it is
No.
supposed to be live.
Oh, here I said no. Um, yes, it is.
So this
I,
this online source will be at the bottom of your article, and it will have the live link. And that's part of what I was going to lead into. Is the reason for that is because it will actually send traffic, and that outbound link has what's called link juice. And so John Piper will very much appreciate that you're giving a link to him from a powerful media website like Joyful Times. So there's a motivation for the author of this article, with this link at the bottom of it now, to send a note or a message to Mr. Piper and say, hey, Mr. Piper, guess what? You've been quoted, and we're linking to your article from this page. So please share that information with your followers so they can see how you're being quoted and how you're being referenced. And thank you so much for writing such an awesome book. And it's a great way to make sure that you're using the social influencers and giving them a reason and a motivation to engage because you have created that link. And so that's the importance of making that a live link. We want it at the bottom of the actual article or post that you've created.
okay, good. Good to know. And this is new to Lisa and me. A lot of it is. We've been starting to do it, but make sure when you do your live link that you have it open in a separate page so they don't lose Joyful Times Today website.
That's a great point, Becky. Excellent. All right. Well, we are rapidly approaching our time limit for the training webinar today, and I think we've covered the main topics. Again, let me close it up by saying there's a lot of information here. You're going to be getting an email follow-up with specific documentation, and then you're going to also have the replay of this that you can look at your convenience. So we really appreciate your attention to this, and we look forward to seeing how you implement the 3 C's of social media. So thank you for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you learning and growing and building your content curation and your community through these tools and strategies. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Kendall.
Thanks, Becky. Thanks, Lisa.